Good morning. My name is Logan Okita, and I'm a teacher at Nimitz Elementary and the vice president of the Hawaiʻi State Teachers Association. Thank you for joining us for this news conference about persistent problems with mold, structural damage, termites, rats, and other maintenance difficulties at Hōlualoa Elementary School on Hawaiʻi Island. I'm going to start today by giving you an overview of the problems. After that, we will hear from several teachers and parents of Hōlualoa Elementary who can talk about how the problems have affected students and staff at the school. And then they will be available to answer your questions. Hōlualoa Elementary was founded in 1895. It has close to 500 students and about 50 faculty and staff. And in spite of the best efforts by its principal, faculty, custodial staff, and parents, the state has continually failed to maintain the campus while underlying problems at the school persist and get even worse. Let's take a look at some of that now.
The biggest problem throughout the Hōlualoa Elementary campus is mold. Teachers say mold like this appears on the walls and the ceilings of many classrooms, especially when the school is closed for a week or more during school breaks. While custodians do their best to clean the mold, teachers say it persists all over, from the ceiling of the school office to the closet doors inside classrooms and the covered walkways around campus. Students haven't been able to use the library since late last year because a first grade class had to temporarily relocate into the library due to persistent mold problems in their classroom. Teachers say in November, the principal asked for professional cleaning of the classrooms to help eradicate mold, but months later, it's still unclear when that will happen. Teachers say several staff tested positive for mold in their lungs, and doctors have told them not to return to school into offices and classrooms affected by mold. Teachers report students have high absentee rates because of respiratory problems. The carpeting in some classrooms is many years old, stained, and in poor condition. You can see portions are held together with duct tape. The state plans to remove these old carpets, which likely are a breeding place for mold underneath. And there are concerns that tearing out the carpets might expose hazardous asbestos in some of these old buildings. The state told teachers it plans to remove carpeting and repaint classrooms affected by mold, but the renovations will continue through the spring and summer breaks, meaning a fix is months away at best. They have been told that the carpets would be removed for the last 3 years, but they're still in place. The school just received these humidifiers on February 9th for every classroom. Staff were instructed to close the windows every night, turn on the dehumidifiers, and then empty them out every morning before school. There are many other problems, like this paint containing lead that's peeling off the ceiling of a third grade classroom. So the students and teacher here relocated to a stage in the cafeteria for weeks, and more recently moved into a computer lab. The largest student public restroom on campus was closed in January over concerns about its structural integrity. Look at the exposed, rusted rebar in the outside corner of the building with cracked, rotted concrete. Recently, state structural engineers inspected the building and deemed it safe to reopen, but longer-term repairs are still needed. Parents and faculty still feel the restroom is unsafe for use. Termite damage is pervasive throughout the older buildings on campus, and that may contribute to potential problems with buildings' foundations. Some supports to buildings have appeared to move off their pylons, a problem that may be exacerbated by volcanic earthquakes on the Kona side of Hawaiʻi Island. Rats are also a problem here. Traps killed 2 rats in a classroom just a few weeks ago. Educators have found rat droppings on classroom materials, and the rats have chewed right through some books and other publications. Staff say rats crawl up and down this tubing in the English learners' classroom through a hole in the ceiling. They also chewed their way through fiber cable wires last month, knocking out the internet and phone service on campus. And rats chewed up a pair of a teacher's sandals left overnight in a classroom, leaving them ravaged. Then there's this aging road that runs right through campus. Elementary students have to cross every day to go to the restroom, the cafeteria, or 2 playgrounds, putting them at risk of getting hit by a vehicle. From the air, you can see how the problem evolved. The original school was built on the right side of the road, but the campus expanded over the years and numerous portable classrooms were constructed on the left side of the road.
Hōlualoa Elementary is one of the oldest schools in the state, and we should be taking better care of it because it's falling apart, putting students and educators at risk of illness and injury. HSTA's primary goal here is to obtain clarity from the state. We want a plan to address the situation, including at the very least, an outline of which repair, maintenance, and other projects will be completed and when. We want to reiterate that the principal has been strongly advocating for improvements at the school, and the custodial staff has done its best to keep things clean. Teachers are constantly pivoting and doing their best by moving classrooms and making temporary fixes, but they need more help from the higher ups in the Department of Education and from the Department of Accounting and General Services, which handles school building repair and maintenance. We're now going to hear from 2 teachers at the school, as well as a couple of parents of students there. First, we have Lisa Vale, Hōlualoa Elementary Student Services Coordinator.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Vale. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it very much. I started here in 1991, special ed teacher. I started in a little portable off the side of the main buildings that was termite infested, is still termite infested. My EA and myself used to staple butcher paper on the ceiling to contain all the termite droppings so they quit falling on my kids and their desks. That was way back. Then I went into student service coordinator. My office was underneath the main building, the oldest building here. And it was like a closet room. People started getting very sick in my room. Teachers that came for lunch. One went to the hospital for 2 weeks. And this was 2002. I had chronic bronchitis, sinusitis. So I filed a grievance for unsafe working conditions. And they brought in a professional mold company back in 2002, eradicated the mold, and then a state inspector came and deemed that room uninhabitable. And that was way back then. And I got moved. My next office was in the new building down by the cafeteria. And that's the one that you saw, the rat infested one. And the EL learners are in now. And that's when the rats would crawl up and down the pipes in the side. I'd be on Zoom meetings during COVID and watch them crawling up and down. Custodial staff caught 3 with regular traps. I got my own electric trap, brought it in, caught 3, and they make the ones you saw in the video tiny. They were enormous, and it's still there. They called vector control. They did everything they could, and they never filled the hole. And the hole's still there, and the rats still crawl up and down. That was the last one. And I'm full circle now. I'm back to the one I started in 91. Beside the termites, it's been condemned for 20 years now. Structurally unsound. So I'm back in here. We have meetings in here. It's all good. My stake in this is that I'm very passionate about it. I've been here this long. I live an hour away. I drive in an hour, drive home an hour, past 6 schools to get here. It's my home and I love it. And this is unacceptable. The no action. No, we started November with the administration. They tried everything that they could. So did the custodial staff. Then I went up the ranks like you're supposed to through the DOE, all the ranks, all the different layers to ask for help. So they started sending people out to investigate. And I've been on every visit walkthrough since the first one with Assistant Superintendent Tanaka, who at that time promised trailers so we could clean the rest of these buildings up one by one because the mold's everywhere. And then from then on, there was just person after person from the highest ranks coming in, structural engineers, all different people, and nothing's been done. And then so out of frustration and the attitude of some of the people that came through here really frustrated me. So I went over and above and around. So I talked to the governor's office, wrote letters to every congressman, representative, senator, BOE, Board of Education, the head there, everyone. And a lot of my colleagues here, we all went on a letter writing campaign. What's happening now is that they're getting replies from the Department of Education that are untrue. And that there's a stock letter that everybody's getting. All of the Congress people, they're all getting a stock letter saying, mitigation is underway. Nothing's happened here. The only thing that's happened here is what our school has done. Our administrator, but the humidifiers. I mean, the custodians are killing themselves cleaning. The only thing that's been done is from our school staff and nothing by the state. And to me, it's just unacceptable. We got the babies here. We're on the Big Island. They grew up in VOG. They're already compromised. So many of them are out on respiratory illnesses. Staff started getting sick. It's unacceptable. Something needs to be done. And I'm not going anywhere till it does. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we have Courtney DiAgostino, a first grade teacher at Hōlualoa Elementary.
Aloha, everybody. My name is Courtney DiAgostino. I'm a first grade teacher at Hōlualoa Elementary School, and I'm here today to raise awareness as to the poor conditions on our campus and at our school, and to also hold DOE and DAGS accountable. For those of you who don't know, DAGS is Department of Accounting and General Services. What we are experiencing in our school simply does not occur overnight. This has been a long pattern of neglect and failure to inspect. And it's had an impact on our students' academics as well as their social and emotional health. During my 22 years of teaching, I've often said that my first job is to keep our keiki safe. My second job is to help them learn. Well, my first job has become increasingly more difficult recently. Keeping students safe is hard when we're handed Band-Aid solutions from DOE and DAGS. And these Band-Aid solutions, they're just today's solutions. They're tomorrow's problems, and we are currently in tomorrow. So it has been way too long that this has been happening, and it's created unhealthy and unsafe conditions for our keiki and our staff. Most recently, due to an invasive mold condition in my classroom, my students and I were displaced to the school library. You saw pictures in the video, with very few supplies. And sadly, the library has even higher mold counts than in my former classroom. And I know this firsthand because I have paid out of my own pocket for mold testing. This testing has not been done. We had, I believe that Mr. Gary Bignami, who is our DOE facilities planner, tested 2 to 4 rooms. So that was 4 tape tests. I have conducted 3 Petri dish tests out of my own pocket. I worry about my students' health on a daily basis, as this is unacceptable. We have been told by Complex Area Superintendent Jeanette Snelling and Mr. Bignami that only a certain percentage of people who have allergies, et cetera, are affected by this type of mold that has been detected. They don't say what that percentage is, but whatever that percentage is, it's at our school. It's our keiki. We have students who have allergies. We have students who have asthma, and they're affected and they're impacted on a daily basis. Our keiki are still growing. We don't know the long-term effect on their health. And while maybe some people at the DOE or other places are willing to bargain with our students' health, I am not. It is a non-negotiable for me. I can speak from a personal standpoint that my own health has been severely impacted over the past 6 months. I've been in and out on medical leave. I am not someone who suffers from allergies, nor do I have underlying health conditions, as Kaz and Mr. Bignami have repeatedly stated as fact. Yet here I am, and mold is attacking my system. Friday was my last day on campus for a while. It's for an extended time. I'm not sure when I'll be back, and I've missed a lot of school, and that leaves me not teaching our keiki. That leaves them in other people's hands. And while we have great subs on campus, this is my profession, and I do what I do for our keiki. Our custodians have done a great job trying to do everything that they can to protect us, but it's not, they can't do it all, and we're already shorthanded at Hōlualoa. The messages that we've been receiving, as if I can piggyback off of what Lisa was saying, they're just blanket statements. As recently as Saturday morning, we received an email from Gary Bignami that stated, efforts are in progress to initiate renovations. To me, that seems extremely ambiguous. And I feel that we deserve more. Our keikis deserve more, our families deserve more, our staff deserves more, and our community deserves more. So I think it's time that we get a timeline in place and that information is shared with us. And I thank everybody for being here. Mahalo.
Thank you, Courtney. Next, we have Jennifer Gillette, a Hōlualoa Elementary parent and former Hōlualoa Elementary teacher.
Aloha, my name is Jennifer Gillette. I am a parent of 2 students at Hōlualoa. I have a first grader who's been displaced out of her classroom, and she's now learning out of the library in Mrs. DiAgostino's classroom. I also have a 5th grader at Hōlualoa who has now been displaced and is learning out of the computer lab. Both of these environments are not the most ideal learning experiences for them, and it affects their learning and ability to make gains in their academics. I do know this as I also was displaced as a former Hōlualoa school teacher due to facilities difficulties. I was moved from one classroom to the next classroom to the next classroom 3 different times in 1.5 semester due to the challenges with having enough facilities at this school. My son's classroom was not considered a problem area. I contacted the complex area superintendent once I found out my daughter was moved, and she went to tell me that there was only a little bit of invite mold growth and it's not a big deal. Well, I was given the opportunity to walk into that classroom after school when I picked up my children from school, and it was way more than what they were trying to perceive to say. There was mold all over the walls. There was mold on the ceiling. You walk in and you just smell a stench of mold. I went next door to the classroom next door. It didn't have any carpet in it, and it was a beautiful breath of fresh air. Immediately, I had to make a decision and request a change because they are refusing to begin any type of cleaning in the classroom. I had to make a decision to move my own child out of what should have been his last year at Hōlualoa, the entire year with his own class. But I made the change that it is in his best interest to have a lesser mold issue in his classroom, and so that's his new placement is the computer lab. I'm also a former elementary school teacher at Hōlualoa, and back in 2020, when I was getting ready to come back from the summer break, we were told we were not allowed to go into our classrooms because they were cleaning our classrooms. So the first day back as a teacher, I was given the opportunity to walk inside, and here's your classroom, and there was mold all over the walls. There was mold all over the ceiling. When I went to admin to ask what was going on, they said your classroom was one of the first classrooms to be cleaned, and that is why it's moldy again now. And if that is so true, then what we're saying is that the mold growth is significant. Over less than 2 months of a period of time, the mold had already taken over all of the walls, the ceiling, and so forth. Our custodial staff, I was a teacher there. Our custodial staff can't keep up with the mold. They do their normal basic duties of just getting the classrooms vacuumed and wiped down for us and taking out our trashes. We need more services. We need the contracted services that have been said that they're going to do, but nothing's happened yet. I couldn't wait for that opportunity for my son to get his classroom clean. I moved him out right away. As an elementary school teacher, I remember going back and wiping down all the mold off of my walls throughout the school year because nobody else was doing it. We need more help. It can't be just the teachers who are trying to keep their classrooms clean. We need help from our state. It's really just unacceptable. And us waiting till our teacher gets sick with mold, and now my daughter's education is and being impacted by it, it's just pure negligence on the state's part. We are hoping for some support soon.
Thank you, Jennifer. Reporters, after our next speaker, we're going to be opening for questions. So if you would like to ask a question, please put your name in the chat. And after our next speaker concludes, I'll start calling on you. Our next speaker is Sarah Teehee, Hōlualoa Elementary parent, Vice President of the Parent Teacher Organization, and School Community Council member.
Aloha, and thank you for coming and being a part of this important meeting today. As Ms. Okita said, I am the Vice President of the Parent Teacher Organization. I am a School Community Council member, and I consider myself a fierce student and teacher advocate. My own son is attending Hōlualoa School as a second grader, and despite everything that you're hearing here, the teachers have so much heart that I am still planning to send my daughter this fall to start kindergarten at Hōlualoa. I'm a common face on campus. I visit campus at least once a week, and I've been doing weekly read alouds so far in February, and I've been sitting in some of these classrooms that you've been hearing about. I want you guys to know that both Jennifer and I, we represent more students, more parents who are unable to be here. Hōlualoa School is a Title I school. That means over half of our families are struggling to make ends meet. It got a lot worse during the pandemic. A lot of these families have parents working multiple jobs, and every day in good faith, they send their children to school expecting that the classroom will be a safe learning environment for their child. But this is not the case for many of the classrooms on campus. The majority of our classrooms are portable buildings, which are only meant to be used for a short and limited amount of time. All classrooms on our campus have one or more safety or health risks, whether it be mold, whether it be 20-plus-year-old carpet over asbestos containing flooring, termite damage, structural questions about the building, weak spots, or recently lead containing paint. Are any of these hazards acceptable to our essential teaching staff and to our students who spend an average of 6 to 8 hours per day in these classrooms? We think not. And that's why we've been investing so much time, our own personal time. These things keep us up at night. That student and teacher health and safety must come first. In my interactions with the DOE, I've found that it lacked transparency. There was a lack of a sense of urgency, and I did not feel that caring connection that I want to feel when I'm talking to someone who is in a position of power, who can make choices about the health and safety of students and staff. I did not get that. So I reached out to elected representatives, leaders, to tell them things that I've already told people in the DOE. For me, my son in second grade, on February 1st, his teacher came into the classroom. She found rat feces and urine on the carpet in the classroom. She went and she asked admin, she said, "This is unacceptable. I cannot teach here. It is not safe for my students." So my son and his class of 20 other kids, they got relocated to the cafeteria stage, and they were on the cafeteria stage for 3 full days, trying to learn there. That's not an ideal learning environment. It's extremely hard on a teacher to pack up everything and move out and then try to conduct class in that kind of place. So thankfully that was cleaned, and then they were able to be transferred, but that interrupts their learning opportunities. It interrupts so much. There was the bathroom crisis in January, and the bathroom building is still not having a long-term fix or repairs, where over almost 465 students were reduced to using 6 bathrooms scattered across campus. That's unacceptable. And when I contacted DOE about it, they did not have the sense of urgency that you would expect when students are having accidents on a daily basis. Kindergartens, first graders having accidents, missing out on recess time, missing out on lunchtime, missing out on instructional time because they have to wait in a line to use these limited amount of bathrooms. It's unacceptable. As a parent, that's not okay. My son also, in October, he had a few days where he had a cough that was so strong, he couldn't stop coughing. And I had to take him out of school and take him to the pediatrician same day. And the pediatrician told me that his lungs were very irritated and aggravated. We had to do a COVID test. It wasn't COVID. He had to give him allergy meds. And then we found out my son couldn't take those because they made him drowsy, even though they said non-drowsy. All of these things, it's affecting his instructional time, his ability to learn. And also, it also affects attendance. My son's best friend for 7 weeks struggled with a cough that he could not shake. And in a time of COVID, the cough is taken very seriously. And he had multiple COVID tests. For a young kid, this is no fun. he had to have a RSV test, and he had such poor attendance over the 7-week course. His parents, who were both working and trying to make ends meet, had to take off multiple days. They had to scramble to figure out childcare. They missed many of their shifts. They had to keep him home, and then they had to also spend money to go to doctor visits for this. And over Christmas break, having him home and not in the classroom over 2 weeks, it went away by itself. So to me, it's a clear example of exposure. And when I talked to the person in facilities, the DOE person who is assigned to us, then he said with a very horrible tone that he was aware of the claims of suspected mold symptoms. And I just can't believe that is the person that our admin has to ask for help and ask for answers to solutions. And over this last week, when I was reaching out to some of the leaders that I've contacted, some of the officials, then I got responses. Well, we heard from your complex area superintendent that the carpet was being removed and that these things were being painted, and that is absolutely not true. Come to our campus, come and see the 2 classrooms that are still locked up. Come see the 2 classrooms that are still displaced. They're here. There's nothing being happening right now that we know of. It is time to invest in Hōlualoa School, invest in our school, which is so old and we're so proud of. We want to invest in a future where our children and our teachers can be kept safe. And it shouldn't come out of the school's budget. When it has to come out of the school's budget for humidifier, for mold professional help for mold services, that takes away from being able to pay other staff positions. It takes away from enrichment programs for our students. And it's not fair when we've been asking all along as a school for help with this maintenance all along, and it's been getting worse with no action. So it's very important that Hōlualoa gets invested in, because students and teachers and staff deserve so much more, a healthy and safe environment. And thank you again for attending today.
Thank you. Reporters, we will be putting a link in the chat to all of the photos and the videos of this school. And we're going to start with the questions that are the folks who have put their names in the chat already. First, we have Rick from Hawaii News Now.
Unmute. Okay, I'm unmuted. The situation you folks describe sounds like something out of a Dickens novel, you know. And so my question is Lisa kind of covered it and Sarah did. In terms of the severity of the reactions, if you guys can describe, Sarah did a great job of that with her son, but are there other kids, are they seeing this kind of a severe reaction, not just to to the mold, and is it triggering additional? Oftentimes people have allergies and then it triggers lifetime asthma. I mean, are you seeing this kind of situation where is well, first of all, describe how bad some of the other teachers and students are experiencing, what sort of their experiences. Anyone can jump.
Hey, hi, Rick. Way back, 2002, the teachers that would come to my room for lunch were getting very sick, very ill, chronic bronchitis, sinus infections. One teacher back then was 2 weeks in the hospital. This is teachers. Now look at the babies. These kids grew up here on bog. They're already compromised. So many have asthma, much more here on the Big Island than anywhere else. They have the asthma, they have the compromised respiratory system. They're in a room. And absence is crazy, right now. And if we had the time and the wherewithal, we'd have polled parents to see how many of those absences were really due to respiratory illness. But they're already in a foggy island. You come into a room with 20-plus-year-old carpet. It's nasty, mold all over the place, asbestos ceiling paint drip falling on you. I mean, it's horrible. And it is a Dickens novel. It's terrible.
And then Courtney, do you want to add, since your situation takes you out starting tomorrow?
Yes, thank you, Logan. And what Lisa's saying also, we also have a friend who retired last year who has been chronically ill for years, coughing for as long as I've known her. And I know you've known her a lot longer, Lisa. I've also recently, Rick, had parents who are starting to put things together, and we've been keeping this kind of on the down low and trying to go through the right chain of command, so to speak. But obviously, as you see, that has not worked for us. I've had parents who have started to reach out to me because they're seeing patterns and they're asking me, what's up? Like, why is this happening when so-and-so is home for vacations or over the weekend or just extended long weekends? They're better, but they go back to school and within 24 to 48 hours, they're really sick again. And this is probably about maybe 4 out of my currently 17 students. And it's not to say that other parents aren't making connections, but those are 4 families that have reached out to me out of concern. Myself, my doctor would have probably had me out this whole year, but I only have so many days acquired, right? That I've worked really hard to acquire and accumulate. And I've had to blow through almost, when this is all said and done, I'm sure I'll go through all of my 60 something sick days that I had prior to the school year beginning. And that's the reality of the situation that we're in right now.
Thank you, Courtney. Does anybody else want to add to Rick's question before we move on?
But there have been multiple staff members who were diagnosed with mold in their lungs. I'm not going to name names. That's not my thing to share, but multiple staff members all having the same issue and having lab tests that confirm the growth of mold in their lungs actively. And for my son's teacher, once a month, I always check in with her. What supplies can I bring to the classroom? What do you need? You need wipes, you need hand sanitizer. And often the most asked for thing is tissues, because the kids are burning through the tissues in her class. Always the nose is going when they're in class. And especially when we get one of those rainy days, and then the next few days that's when the mold spores release, it's really bad. And it really affects your learning. How you're supposed to get through a spelling test when your nose keeps dripping and you're blowing your nose every 2 minutes.
Thank you. And then Esme, you're up next with your question.
Oh, thank you. Before I ask the actual question that I wanted to ask, just a quick detailed question for Courtney about, I know you were saying that you'll be out from this point. Can you be a little bit more specific about, I don't know how much you're comfortable sharing, but for me to be able to report that, I want to be able to say she's out with this condition and it was linked by her doctor to this. Are you able to kind of fill in the blanks there?
Yes. For instance, let's see. I've been taking off probably about a day or 2 a week, even on shortened weeks when we've had a long weekend. And I'll find I start to feel better and I'm just a little raspy, clearing my throat, but not coughing quite as often. And I'll go into school on a Monday or Tuesday, whatever the first day of that particular week may be. And by that evening, my husband is asking me not to go to school the next day because he doesn't want me to have to be there in those conditions, because I'm coughing for hours at length. I can't catch my breath. I have no voice. And then I'm usually up by 3 o'clock in the morning and calling out sick by 4 and getting my lesson plans ready. So even when teachers are off, we're not really off. So here I am homesick and continuing to work.
No doubt, no doubt. I hear you absolutely on your symptoms. I just curious whether, did your doctor give like a name, an actual label, like for example, you've been diagnosed with this specific illness and it's specifically linked to the mold?
She put the pieces together for me. Since I haven't been this sick, I can go for that testing. And she said that it was unnecessary, as that would cost me additional thousands of dollars out of pocket.
She feels that it is mold. She feels that it is mold connected.
Oh, absolutely. She was pumping the well and started to ask me questions. And she asked me about my home. And I thought, well, gosh, I guess anybody could have mold. And then I said, oh gosh, I was being so literal. I teach first grade, right? I spend my day with 6 and 7-year-olds. And then I said, oh my goodness. And I held up my phone and showed her that all the pictures I'd been taking on campus, and I hadn't linked that together, as I'm not a specialist. I'm not a mold mitigation service. I'm not a doctor, but she put it together within the first, 20 minutes of our conversation.
Got it.
This was going back to November.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Logan, is it okay if I ask my regular question now?
Yeah. Lisa, do you have an additional?
Yeah, I do. I'm not going to say a name. Hi. But there's a person in this campus right now who was diagnosed with 4 different strains of mold growing in his lungs. He's been going to the mainland for treatment. I'm not going to say name, but it's a definitive. And when that person told the higher ups about it, there was no concern, there was no compassion, and there was no empathy. Just saying.
Thank you, Lisa. Esme, your actual question?
Thank you. This might be a question for folks on the ground, or it might be a question actually also maybe for Logan. I'm trying to sort of understand the long-term causes and then the long-term fixes of this. I do hear that of course, it's the agedness of the buildings and the non-responsiveness, as you say, from DOE, et cetera. But are there also like, is it very high humidity there, for example? Is the school not getting enough money? Is it, you know what I mean? I feel like, and just by way of background, I've been covering education off and on since the 90s. So problems with CIP and repair and maintenance are just like constant. So I'm trying to understand kind of like the long-term causes, the context in terms of, is it HSTA's position? I mean, like, this is unusual to have a press conference on this particular school at this particular time. Is it your feeling that there are many schools like this, or is it this particular school stands out as being the worst situation that you've seen? And then a question about long-term fixes. Indeed, I hear a need expressed for professional cleaning and monitoring and things like this, but is this going to be a perpetual problem for the school, that services will be needed perpetually, or what is the long-term fix? Like, do permanent buildings with good air conditioning need to be built? You know what I'm saying? Like, or what is the practical long-term fix? So cause and long-term, I guess.
Why don't we start with any of the teachers or parents if you have something about the cause?
Well, like mentioned, they are portable buildings. Their nature is temporary, and most of the portable buildings on campus are I don't know, I want to say at least 40 years old. Lisa, does that sound right? Like their acceptable length of time is like 20. A portable building is expected to be 20 years, but some of them maybe 40 and going on more. And then the standards of safety have changed in all those years. So these things were made with asbestos in the flooring. These things were made with lead paint in the paint. So some of the asks that have happened have been like, first of all, it's pervasive. And even the DOE in its own environmental assessment report has acknowledged that it's pervasive mold issues, and that they have been going on back to 2011, if not 2001, even earlier, as Lisa mentioned. But even in the DOE's own report, it mentions how far this has been a problem. The recommendations that we received for how to combat this were almost a copy and paste from old ones. And we don't have workable ceiling fans in all the classrooms. Okay, we've got the louver system, right? So we would like AC in some of these classrooms. We would like workable fans in these classrooms. But then there's also things like the DOE and the DOH have this way of looking at asbestos and lead and saying that we'll encapsulate it, which to me, and as a parent, is kicking the can down the road for it to happen again. But right now we've reached a crisis point that it needs professional help to get it to a place where it is manageable. So once it's manageable, at a manageable place, like the mold has been correctly killed by a professional in the wall, then it needs to be repainted with a mold inhibiting paint. And then we have to ensure that there's better circulation. That's many different steps to get it to a place where it can be somewhat maintained. But yes, we're absolutely a high humidity place. But I grew up in Volcano. I'm in Volcano right now on my long weekend, taking time for this. but like we understand how mold works, but also like this was set up to fail and it is failing and there's no surprises.
Lisa?
Sorry, I keep talking, everybody. The short-term solution was professional cleaning. Professional cleaning, repainting, yanking the carpets, putting tile down. Where that's at for the last 3 months is dickering on who's going to do it. Dickering on what's coming first. What department's responsible for it? Who's going to do it? When? Our school has offered, we'd hire the professional cleaning company, this has been ongoing, nothing, it's going up the ranks. The long-term solution, we need a new school, and we've known that forever. I'm on my 15th principal. We have 3 master plans in the books that have never been funded by the legislature. 3 different ones. The last one is get a 2-story building, cement. They've never been funded. So, and even Assistant Superintendent Tanaka, when he came, it's like, you know what? I'll get trailers, temporary housing while we clean these buildings. Then we talk more to him, and he's like, we just probably need new buildings. And that was like, and he goes, but it's going to take a lot to do that. Well, we've been trying now for 30 years.
Thank you. And so to address the question about to HSTA, we know that there are maintenance issues statewide. We know that there are problems with buildings statewide. We are having this because Hōlualoa is in a crisis. They're in a situation that is more acute, and we are seeing those problems, and we aren't getting the answers that the teachers and the community need in order to know that their students and the staff are being kept safe. So we're holding this today because we need to know that there is a plan to address this, and that plan isn't going to only come out of the school's budget, because that takes away from what the students need and what the students deserve. I'm going to now go to Cassie from Civil Beat.
My question is for Courtney and other teachers who paid out of pocket for testing for mold. I was wondering if you're comfortable sharing how much have you paid out of pocket, because I'm assuming it's a lot of money considering the fact that you folks have to pay for school supplies for your students.
Thank you, Cassie. Great question. Actually, it's funny you should ask that, because Mr. Bignami, facilities planner, specifically said when I shared my mold results, said, oh, there are just lots of parasitical companies out there these days trying to make a buck on this. So actually the tests are $33 a piece with $8 or $9 for shipping. And then they also give you a report with it. So I don't think that they're really making that much money on, mold kits that are not quite, just under $50. I've only paid for 3 of them. So I've done almost as much testing as Gary Bignami has on our campus. And both rooms actually were at hazardous levels, which is likely to, or highly likely to, impact your health. And if anybody wants to see them, I'd be happy to share.
Thank you, Courtney. Anyone else? Okay, and then Chelsea from West Hawaii Today.
Hi, I wanted to ask, this sounds pretty bad, and what you guys are saying, it sounds like something like these need to be closed for a while and taken care of. Can parents feel safe sending their kids to the school to learn? I mean, what do they have any choice? I know there's geographical exemptions, but what do parents have any choice of sending their kids into these facilities?
Jennifer, as a parent, do you want to take that question?
I can speak to that. I went in and I asked for a report. It wasn't a full report. My son's classroom specifically wasn't considered a problem area, although when I went in, I saw the problem. It hasn't been adequately assessed, and I went to talk to the principal and I asked him to move him to a different classroom. So my son has been moved into a different classroom individually. That is not supporting the rest of the kids. It's hard. The teachers really want to help and stand up and say something, but they're so busy working to teach the children that they're unable to say, hey, this is not a safe place for my kids. They need to move. I don't think it's I don't think the classroom my son was in was very safe. I think that's why I made him move, because I don't feel that him breathing those chemicals and the air in there is safe at all. So that's my thing.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anyone else want to address that question before I give a little statement? Oh, Courtney, go for it.
Just that there are GEs that, where you could go to another school, but our schools are very crowded as they are. So a lot of administrators are no longer accepting them, just to answer Chelsea's question a little bit more. So even though some schools or some families do have that option, it's not for everybody, and it depends on the size of the school and at what capacity they are currently at.
Thank you. And we aren't asking parents to pull their students. We aren't asking parents to go and ask for their students to be moved because of the situation. We want to fix the situation so that students don't have to feel unsafe in their classrooms. Are there any other questions? Oh, Rick.
There you go. I think in the video they talked about not being a structural problem, and I think Lisa talked about the biggest part of it was just cleaning. What would you estimate the fix at? What would it cost to fix this problem? Is it, and I don't say, I'm not asking for exact amounts, but maybe magnitudes, tens of thousands of dollars versus millions. And if it's the former, why do you think it hasn't been done?
I don't know that we're necessarily qualified to give you an estimate on the cost of a repair. The repairs could go from cleaning and repainting and removing the carpets all the way to building a new building on campus. But there are structural problems also. So it's not just the mold and the rats. There are structural issues. Lisa may have some quotes from previous years of.
I don't know numbers. It's astronomical. We know how backed up the system, and we know all the steps of the bureaucracy you have to go to get it. The big thing that my takeaway is that there are 3 different master plans that have been laying somewhere on a shelf, not funded. They say, DOE says, because the legislature will not fund it. So if that's the case, that's what we're pleading out that way. Someone, give us some help here.
And if I may follow up on my first question, how many school days do you estimate? I mean, is there any way to estimate the aggregate school days that kids miss and teachers miss because of mold-related problems?
Yeah, as a parent, I would chime in a little bit here that's been increasingly hard to track. We have COVID the last few years. We've had crazy VOG the last few years. So there are a lot of different factors at play, and it's hard to take those apart and separate them. That's very challenging. But seriously, we had a school nurse she would take sore throat and coughs very seriously. And it did affect many students. I can tell you, my son, I had been called numerous times during the last 2 years because my son had a sore throat. And he had a cough, and it was something that, especially during COVID, you don't mess with it. It's no questions asked. You come and you pick up your kid because you don't want to put the rest of the students at risk. So that it's been really hard. But if we were able to do a poll of parents, a poll of allergy things, I feel like that would be very helpful. And I think the Department of Health or the DOE should look into polling the parents, even if it's just by building. This building, let's poll the kids in this building, and let's poll this. And actually, some of us have been drafting up a poll, but as far as getting permissions to put that out to parents, that's very tricky. but there's definitely those of us who are willing, because we'd love to get more data to show to the people who don't seem to think it's very serious.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to do a last call for questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Logan, is that okay?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. I'm just curious, who is the highest level person in the DOE that you guys have personally spoken to about this? And I see hands coming up. And what the response has been.
Go for it, Lisa.
The highest level one was Assistant Superintendent Randall Tanaka. It was when we brought this problem to the attention of the union, our union reached out and he was here within a day. DOE and our administration kept trying everything they could. Took our union to get him to show up here. He came to the campus. He saw a few things. He heard what was going on. He was here very briefly. He's the one with all the promises. But he sounded very promising. He was just back again last week, and it's he's very promising. Nothing's happening, but we're getting contractors. We're working on it. It was, and I'm being very honest here, the person that's under him, Gary Bignami, you've heard his name all through this, who came here, and his attitude was horrendous. He minimized everything. He condescended to us. He acted as if it was nothing, and he did a big study on the humidity in this area, and it's mold everywhere in Hawaii, and it was a slap in our faces. And that's what really angered a lot of us, to go around and above the DOE.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ez. Okay, seeing no other questions, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you to Sarah and Lisa and Courtney and Jennifer for sharing their stories and sharing how this is impacting our students and our community. And I hope that our message comes across that we need to just have some clarity from the state, and we want to know what the plan is to make sure that our students and our staff are safe, and that our communities can trust that when they're sending their keiki to the schools, that they are going to be kept safe and their health is at our utmost importance. Thank you, everyone.